Here's what happened. Mike, you were on the podcast around 5 months ago. The quote I've remembered from that conversation is, "We don't actually know how bad we felt until we start feeling good." When do you feel the strongest as a man?
When I'm vulnerable, I'm just
Mhm.
telling the truth. I think everyone has to decide their own definition of masculinity. I think it's very misconstrued. And yeah, there is unfortunately a lot of toxic masculinity out there. But then I also think there's a lot of hatred from, yeah, kind of a polarized opposite end where like everything that is masculine is toxic, which I don't agree with. But I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I kind of stole this from him. Honestly, he was like, "I think the definition of masculinity is confident vulnerability," and I always find that the doors for my life and the gateways I'm trying to break through, or even things I don't even know were possible in terms of like abundance, just come my way when I just speak the truth. And you know how Instagram allows you to do little notes on your like messages and your DMs. I had this like download this morning, and it was there's 3 words, which is pretending is selfish. Because yeah, you're not opening up, you're not telling the truth, and it's selfish to not tell the truth. And you know, selfish sounds like a harsh word, and I honor everyone's nervous system. That's usually the reason people don't tell the truth, is because they're afraid of what people might think. And I had a conversation with someone last night about this, like, because we've created this society where we think we have to be on all the time, and it's like not okay to not be okay, or like you're weak if you're vulnerable, then even when someone's feeling like crap or they're depressed and they're like out in public, then they're just putting on this mask, they're putting on this, yeah, false self. And so then when they do that, then the other person might be going through something as well, but because everyone in society is putting on that mask, they think they have to do it too. So then it's like nobody heals if nobody tells the truth. And I don't even really, I guess, try. I think I take it for granted, but vulnerability is definitely a skill. A lot of it for me just kind of comes from telling my story and just being grateful that I've overcome a lot of stuff. But to me, it's not vulnerability; it's just telling the story, which is the truth.
Mm. How do you know you are feeling the truth and being able to communicate that? Like, what is that experience like relating back to the body?
Hmm. Excellent question. I think it's a resonance. I'm not sure if you're keen or familiar with Zach Bush, but this is exactly what he describes. It's like it's the truth isn't something we see or hear; it's really something we feel. Because, not to go on a tangent, but even like there was a kind of an interesting like synchronous interaction I had on a plane. I think it was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and this like an older guy who actually ended up I realized he like wrote a book, and it was like a pretty well known book, and I think he's like, I don't know, I want to say like Mexican or like from some sort of like tribal yeah, background. And he was just like a wise guy, like, but in a good way. And he was like asking me, because he knew I was like younger than him, he's like, what do you think the truth is, or like what's the problem with like saying the truth? And he said the word, or the article the, right before it. Because really, if you think about it, there is no the truth. There is no like one objective truth. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, us as humans, we can see things, we can feel things, we can agree on things, but at the end of the day, everyone has their own reality. They've got their own childhood traumas, they've got their own life experiences that create the truth for them. But really, it should be like my truth. Here's my truth. And I think that's where we can understand each other more, is that like there is no objective truth. It's just, what about your truth feels right, and how can I understand that better? Because when you look at politics in the modern day world, it's like people are literally operating from their wounded inner child, operating at the psychological level of a 5-year-old in a 50-year-old body, just bickering back and forth at each other, getting absolutely nowhere, making things worse. And yeah, I think there is, you know, some agreements at a foundational level when it comes to like objectiveness on just like, okay, can we look at some numbers? Can we look at some stats and just take out the emotion? Although emotion is important, and I'm a big advocate of emotional intelligence, and that is a huge part of human communication. But when they override your system and they then take you out of like what the actual, I guess, your truth, or like an agreeable truth could be, like this is what Tony Robbins says, is like, see things as they are, not worse than they actually are. And I think when people put too much emotion into a topic that they're talking about, then they don't even actually think about like what exactly they're saying. They're really just kind of spewing and projecting their emotions and kind of making up their mind in an argument before the argument even, or the conversation even starts. Right.
I relate that to even burnout, where it's so important to be able to move through that and avoid burnout in order to have the critical thinking as well as the emotional intelligence, and understanding that those are, yes, one from the body, but they are separate in how you can be able to have a conversation with someone else. And then, as you said, like on a foundational level, what can be also the facts that can be brought in, and where can be the consensus that comes in
Mm-hmm.
for conversations. And that's so important. Relating back to truth, even with food, how does food strengthen us?
You know, I was hosting one of my group calls the other day, and I think health and nutrition is something I just take for granted because it's so ingrained into my lifestyle. And, you know, for better or worse, like I live kind of in an echo chamber here in Southern California. And a lot of the skills I have are just like now subconscious things that I don't even, it's like a unconscious competence where I don't even have to think about it, which I'm grateful for. But one of my clients, you know, with my program, you know, it's nutrition based, but it's very holistic. And at the end of the day, like my group calls, the ultimate intention and goal is to hold safe space for people. And I have multiple clients from multiple different backgrounds and different ages. And I think it was the week after, uh, yeah, everything that was going on with the Charlie Kirk passing and the woman getting stabbed. And it was like the anniversary of 9/11 and the school shooting. And so like for me, I get to the root when it comes to nutrition and food. And oftentimes that's actually what goes on off your plate, and not and how that affects what goes onto your plate. And so I opened up the group call in the container, and I was like, guys, like I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. Like there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I want to let you know that this is like a safe space. You know, this doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to put a label on it. Just like talk about what feels real and like what came up for you through all this. Because for me, the two emotions were disturbed, um, saddened, and I guess the third was also hopeful. Um, but I just say all this, I use that for context because one of my clients was like, you know, as I've gone through your program and I've really tuned into listening to my body and eating better foods and using and seeing that as like self-respect, you see all the mental illness that's out there. And obviously there's multiple factors in the modern day world, whether it's just pressure from a stressful job, um, you know, the environment, plastics, you know, EMFs, Bluetooth, but food, you know, is something we do 3 times a day, every single day. And so a lot of people think about finance. It's like, okay, I'm going to invest 100, 200, 300, $500 a month so I can have a nice, healthy savings in retirement when I'm ready to retire. But then when they turn 30, 40, 50, 60 with their health and they get these illnesses, but they haven't been, you know, using compound interest every single day to eat healthy food, then they wonder why they're getting sick. And I'm not saying I'm foolproof or I'm bulletproof or anybody is. Like there's always things that are out of our control. But it's like, how can you expect to be healthy down the road if you're not, yeah, making that compound interest, not just with finance, but with your health? So it's like pay now or pay later. And so, I mean, even Mark Hyman has talked about this. There's like studies, I think it's from the BMJ, but some sort of well-known study. And it talked about when they changed the diet of like prison inmates from like the processed crappy, you know, prison food that they give them to like a whole foods diet plus like supplementation of like fish oil and like vitamin B12 and vitamin D, that it decreased the acts of like criminal behavior and yeah, like altercations within the inmates by like 40%. And I mean, like, you know, Alzheimer's is now being deemed as type 3 diabetes because of how much our insulin and what we eat and sugar is coordinated and correlated to our brain health. You know, sugar in excess just inflames the brain, and too many medications is a toxicant to the body, and that inflames the brain. And not getting good sleep and not getting enough blood flow, you know, breathing through your nose, or yeah, if you're snoring at night, that cuts blood flow to your brain. If you drink too much caffeine, that cuts blood flow to your brain. If you're too stressed out, that cuts blood flow to your brain. And it's just an inflamed brain. And so when you eat crappy food and too much sugar and don't live a healthy lifestyle, it inflames your brain. And then we wonder why people do all these crazy things in the world. And, you know, it's not all just food. It's like the messages we send out there and the impact. And it's also unhealed emotional trauma and inner child wounds. So those are the two things I'm most passionate about, is nutrition and like inner child, trauma healing, because for me, that's really the biggest reasons I believe that there's so much craziness in the world. And I'm like, I joke about it, but it's like, what if politicians were required to do breath work or like meditate or do yoga? Like, I wonder how different the world would be, because people that are in the health space, from my opinion, seem to be some of the most calm, grounded, objective, like neutral yet kind-hearted people that organically get connected to the universe or the higher power. Or even myself, I feel a lot more comfortable now saying God, just because I've been through so much like burnout and like frustration and tough depressive times, that there's just no other way to explain the light that came on the other side from such a dark place outside of God. And honestly, me being here in the woods right now in the mountains, like, I'm not joking, like I speak to God. And that's the first time I've really been able to say that, because I know God is all around us all the time, but especially in a more potent level, like in nature, because obviously he's the creator of all of us. So yeah, dude, I think food plays a massive factor. And I was on a podcast like a year ago, and one of my friends said nutrition is the gateway drug to spirituality. And so I think right now we're living in a spiritual, we have like a spiritual epidemic crisis going on. People don't know how to connect to their body, connect to themselves. And then they're all just spewing things on Facebook and in person and just like yelling at each other like children. And I don't know if you had a chance, and obviously wouldn't expect it, but I released an article on Substack and through Instagram, my letter to America. And it's basically all just about why people act the way they do and why there's such polarization in the world. And often it ties back to not treating your body well and not healing your traumas, and the ego taking over. So,
Well, relating to that article, I mean, a line that stuck out to me in that one was, how can someone be open to feedback without having to agree with it? Because as a small business owner, there's a lot of shoulding that can happen, where you should do this, should do that. And then you can feel like you have to agree with everything and then bounce all over the place. I think about that with my mind bouncing all over the place, and can keep you stuck in a loop. So how can someone be open to that feedback without having to agree with it?
Your triggers are an invitation to find out where in your life you are not free, and where you have old stuck wounds and traumas that bother you and irritate you. So it's easier said than done. But when you can have gratitude for things that trigger you or things that people say, and just be like curious and remain interested as to why that triggers you, then it becomes a little bit more fun, because it's like a game of discovery and curiosity. And that has been the epicenter of my kind of ideology and mindset the past 2 to 3 years, as I went through that spiritual awakening after the burnout. Because when you get yourself to such a place of darkness, and literally the dark night of the soul, everything comes to the surface. Every insecurity, everything you'd never want to admit to anybody, or anything you're scared of facing, like it just, the entrepreneurial journey will just shove it right in your eyeballs and you can't ignore it. So I've learned to like build a different relationship with my triggers, and it's been really powerful. And even like the microcosm examples of everyday life, like little things that get you stressed out. I mean, it sounds like super simple, but even like yesterday, trying to figure out my stuff with the USPS and how I'm like digital nomading now, and how do I set up a PO box, or like, does it make sense because I'm only going to be here for a month or two and then I'm going to the East Coast? Like, what do I do? And like, doing taxes as an entrepreneur, like these seem like small examples. I'm just using these as examples because they can trigger you, and it's interesting. And that's really all it is. It's just interesting. And so for me, it's like, there's always just a lesson somewhere, whether it's something small like that, or it's 16 months of straight burnout, depression, anxiety, and ADHD that you just are so confused by why is happening to you, but there's always a lesson in it. And so, yeah, I think there's just got to be a level of like willingness, and the willingness I think comes from pain and knowing that there's a journey. And so I think sometimes there are people that are committed to staying asleep. Like they're just so one track minded in how they believe. And not to get too far into the political thing, but like I don't consider myself a Republican nor a Democrat. I've always kind of been super neutral, and I talk about this in my letter to America. Like I'm kind of like the Switzerland of all Switzerlands. Like, and especially being the youngest child, I always got stuck between like my sister and my brother, trying to like take sides. And I've just seen that as a pattern, like kind of avoiding conflict and all that. But it's been funny because now as an entrepreneur, you know, you build boundaries, and once you go through burnout, you really have to build those. And so you have to have tough conversations. And so usually like our biggest weakness or our biggest insecurity, our biggest fear, um, like working through that and running straight into it is actually the exact thing that's going to set you free. And so if someone gives you honest truth and feedback, it might trigger you in that moment and it might not make sense. And you might actually get mad at that person. But then it might take a day, it might take a month, a year, 10 years. And you're like, wow, what that person said actually like makes a ton of sense. And that's exactly what I needed to hear. But to your point, to the question, is like when your emotions are so pent up and you let them take over your body and pull you out of just like, okay, what is actually happening, even from like a primal perspective of like survival. Like, okay, if there's a bear attacking me or like a fire happening or some sort of catastrophic event, like how can I like take my emotions as much as I can out of this and just be like, okay, what's the next best step, or what's like the feedback I can gather from my environment to take the next best step forward. So yeah, I think the question you asked was just like, how do people kind of put their maybe not triggers aside, but just be open and willing to feel the triggers and understand where someone's coming from and put themselves in their shoes. Because if you're so already set on this is how it is, like this is the truth, like how crazy could this person be for thinking the opposite of me, then the reticular activating system, when you break it down to like a scientific biological level, is going to look for all the things you think to be true and the evidence that might come from what that person is saying that maybe deflect what you actually believe, or you'll spin it a different way because you're so set in what you already believe. So for me, it's like I'm a nutrition coach, I'm a health coach, I've learned so much. And at the end of the day, because I kind of went through a massive ego death with my burnout and spiritual awakening, I'm so willing to admit things that no longer serve me. And I think that's one of the biggest and most admirable traits of any person, any leader, is someone that can be willing to admit like, oh man, like I'm either wrong or maybe there's a better way of doing this. And this person isn't crazy, and maybe they have actions that, yeah, have repercussions and affect people. It doesn't, it doesn't dismiss their actions. But if we can understand that most people act crazy or do a certain thing or think a certain way because of their childhood trauma and their life experiences, if we understand them more, maybe we can come to a middle ground and actually, yeah, unite with each other instead of pull apart. And it's just sad because when you think about the United States of America, it feels like right now we almost like don't even deserve that word in there, united.
When it's going into that word united, realizing we're all on the same team, there are outliers as that happens, but generally speaking, we're all on the same team. Uh, and it was interesting listening to what you're saying of um, when it comes to feedback. It'd be great to get your take on this because when I think of like the values that you set for yourself, if that's for your character, I think of for me, it's courage and honesty are two of mine. And actually having definitions for what those actually mean, not just saying these words just to have these words. But like courage, for example, is like taking action that's true to me without knowing what the outcome is going to be. But how do you navigate that for yourself, or do you have like a situation that comes up when you have to realize that this other person doesn't have the same worldview, and that is where the boundary comes in of either saying no to something that they're requesting or just saying, hey, we're gonna not agree on this, but having clarity.
Mm.
What is that feeling like? Is there a situation that comes up for you that relates to that?
Yeah, there's definitely some specific examples. And I think a lot of it, even outside of politics, just boundaries in general and like how you want to live a life of good energy and feeling happy and not having, whether it's toxic things or toxic people in your life, toxic things could be food as well. But you have to be able to set boundaries with yourself to be able to set them with other people. Um, and, I'm very open to having a conversation with someone on the basis of let's seek to understand each other rather than let's have a war and a battle and see who's going to win this argument. So setting the framework and setting the intention, and if someone is willing to do that, I'm an open book and I'm super cool with that. But if someone is very set in their ways and I can feel their energy and sense the energy in that conversation, like with all due respect, it's just not worth my energy or time. Like if you're trying to like fix someone or prove something to someone that already has their mind made up, it's just not even worth it. So I've had a few conversations that went super well, and whether they were on the basis of a political situation or conversation or just like how we can better our friendship or relationship, just human to human, I found that 98% of the time, if you go in with the right intention, be like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you because I want to better our relationship and I want to become closer to you, understand myself, understand you more, then it's always a win-win. And I go into the conversations as well, knowing that if they don't take it well, or if they have like kind of a block or a ego, barrier, then that's also the exact feedback that I need to see and hear. And more than anything, like I said, when it comes to the truth, feel. And sometimes I find myself like even justifying, oh, maybe they said this because XYZ, but like there's such like a gut feeling literally in your gut and like your sternum and in your chest that's just like, I just feel like it's like a waste of breath when I even try to say something, or I say something and they twist my words and it's just, I can't win. And so maybe there's that, which we all have, like that ounce of like people pleasing in us, or just like wanting to make it work. But at the end of the day, like if you're looking to live a life on a certain frequency and energy and happiness and peace and vibration, it's a law. Like it's an energetic law that there are people that will either be, above where you are and that's where you want to be, or there's people that are below. And I'm not saying from like a authority standpoint, but just some people want to live a life doing XYZ here. Some people want to live a life doing XYZ here. And naturally these things just they don't connect, right? Unless they're on the same energy. Even if it's disagreement and different things and different viewpoints, if this energy is there and the intention is there and the open and willingness and really love and authenticity, then that's where I think unison and like real conversation can happen. So I don't even remember the exact question you asked, but hopefully that answers it.
Well, to tie it into even deeper, it's going back to boundaries, like and navigating that as a business owner. It's just knowing that you can both be confident in your worldview, open to understanding where someone's coming from, and then I really believe it's important to realize you can disagree, and that's still okay to be in the same space.
Yeah,
and actually still have a care for the person, if that's from an employee standpoint to other business owners you're collaborating with, or other business owners you're working with, that I feel can release a lot of stress for business owners, where it's just not everyone has to be on the same page as you, and vice versa. So do you have a take with that?
Dude, I love that. I saw this Joe Dispenza YouTube video, I want to say like 6 months ago, and I keep kicking myself because there was like a little infographic at the beginning of it that was just like so perfect on like just how you view the world. And I like honestly have been like looking to find it again. And I just can't. But anyway, it's essentially two people, and I think it's like a man and a woman. It doesn't really matter. But the man is like, oh my God, like there's a picture of it's a man and a woman, and there's a bee above the two people. And the man is like, oh, like this bee is dangerous. It's going to sting us. Like we got to like run away. And then the woman is like, oh my God, look how beautiful this bee is. It's going to, nourish us with honey, and like, look at its like beautiful wings. So it just goes to show you, like, literally you can look at the same exact thing from two very different perspectives, just depending on your life experiences and your thought process. And, I think most people kind of live in a state of fear, unfortunately, because that's how a lot of us have been programmed. And there's also so much clickbait online and on the internet, and it's really unfortunate because it really skews things. And dude, these freaking devices, these cell phones are, I also published an article probably 2 years ago called the weapons of mass distraction. And it's crazy how much these things can literally shape your mindset and your ideologies. And I'm like fully willing to admit that obviously like I'm in the health space, I'm in the, entrepreneur space. And so, yeah, I get fed a lot of, holistic things. And I do my best to like see both sides. Obviously, all of us on either side are going to resonate with what we resonate with. And there are times where I try to like see the other side. And when I can just tell someone's wounded and they're like speaking from a wounded place, it's almost like they can say all they want, but because I can just tell that they're trying to prove something, it just feels like an attack. And that's why there's so much dysregulation within the humans and within humans as a whole, collectively, because they're literally attacking themselves because there's some wound in them, and then they're just projecting it onto other people. But yeah, man, I think that, yeah, I definitely have times where I like post about stuff online that I know might be dicey for some people, but I think people who've been following me for a while, or people that just know me at my core as a human, understand that everything I post about really does come from a place of like love and genuine intention and authenticity. So that, yeah, no matter what I say, or if it's like, if it's a truth that hurts, they know hopefully that I'm saying it because I want to help them. It's from a place of love, right? Because I think people who care about you, especially your friends, or even if they're strangers or followers on Instagram, like they will tell you the truth, even if it hurts, right? If you have a friend that's in a toxic relationship and you know that you see them getting worse and worse and less healthy and like it's ruining them, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, dude. Like, we get it. Like, you want to support that person. Obviously, they have love for their partner, but at the end of the day, like, everyone want what's best for themselves. But sometimes when you're so stuck in your own situation, you have your blinders on and you literally don't have this outside perspective and you can't really see what's going on and how much it's actually harming you. So as a good friend, you tell the truth and you say, hey, look, I actually don't think this person is like good for you. You can do whatever you want. This is your life. And I know our nervous systems love familiarity and it's like easy to get stuck in that. But like, I want you to know that I've seen things change, right? Or if like you have a family member or friend that has issue with like drugs or alcohol, like, hey, this is going to sound tough. And there's always a right way to approach these conversations, but like, you're going to just like let that person literally kill themselves and like slowly die by abusing these drugs and alcohol, or you're going to step up and tell the truth, even if it triggers them, because usually the first defense is denial. Oh, I don't have a problem with that, And so, yeah, it's like there's always a high reward with high risk. But at the end of the day, like when it comes to nutrition and the health space, I mean, again, I'm super willing and open. And that's a subjective thing to say because some people might not think that, but I see myself that way. And I think most people do too, which is cool. But like when you look at the stats of, you know, celiac disease has increased like 400% since 1960. Childhood diabetes has increased 300% since 1990s. 1 in 2 Americans will get cancer at some point in their lifetime. 1/3 of Americans have prediabetes and 90% of them don't even know it. I mean, the stats just go on and on. And so for me, it's like, how are we sitting here just sitting and thinking that the way that our medical systems are advancing better than ever, that somehow this is working? We put so much time, so much effort, so much quote technology into these advancements, but like the problem is when we tie our ego and our old ways of doing things a certain way for so long, it's so hard to drop that. And so that sometimes people are doing these things even if they know it's not really like, say, healing a patient or helping. But when you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of like going to medical school and stuff, I mean, look, we can be super grateful for the Western system and like in emergencies and surgeries and stuff like that, like 100%. And we can find a good match between Eastern and Western. But the problem is not a lot of people realize that John D. Rockefeller used to be an advocate for homeopathy, and then he realized that petroleum-based medications are a much cheaper way to treat patients. And then they basically suppressed all the information about homeopathy and natural healing and using nature and herbs and supplements. And then that's when big pharma just like totally took over, and industrialization has just destroyed the health of Americans and the world, quite frankly. So for me, it's like, you look at someone like RFK, and the guy had literally used to be addicted to like heroin, and he obviously went through a huge fucking healing journey and met with God and met the depths of himself. And he's been doing this his entire life, and seeing him kind of go up on against these senators or whatever. Like, he's literally a warrior. Like, he's just getting thrown swords and gunfire right at him, and just in the face of all of it, just being like, this needs to stop. And what I think is most inspiring is the reason he started his journey is because he physically, for years and years, like, saw kids that were like obese and getting sick, and you just, seeing how our kids are being mistreated. And so you can just tell he's authentic, he's genuine, and he's operating from a place of actually caring. And so, yeah, I made a post a week or two ago, and I thought about what happened first. Actually, was I made an Instagram story, and it was kind of like a long paragraph, and I got like, I don't know, 25, 30 hearts on it, being like, holy crap, this is amazing. And then 2 people were like, can you make this a post so I can share it? I was like, okay. And so I put it into a carousel to like organize it well, and just, again, kind of like objective facts. I mean, you look at the data, it's like we spend 20% of our GDP on healthcare, yet we're literally the sickest country in the world. And you can see the graph, and it's like all the countries are up here, and then America's just like down here, life expectancy. But on the graph at the bottom is like, we spend way more. And same deal, we had 20% of the world's COVID deaths, but we only have 4% of the world's population. So we have to just stop and slow down and be like, is what we're doing actually working? And that's the exact question I asked myself when I was going through my burnout. Is there something I need to change? Because even though I'm this health coach doing all this stuff, like, obviously, maybe I didn't know at the time, but like, obviously, because I wasn't building boundaries and I was people pleasing and doing these things around emotional intelligence, I didn't realize I needed, like, I had to like just let my ego die and just be like, okay, maybe there's a new way of doing things. So all that to say, yeah, I almost didn't post it. But I'm really freaking glad I did. There's like, I want what's best for everybody. I want everyone to feel good, but you can't please everybody. And that's exactly what the, projection of people pleasing is trying to do just that. So I posted it, and the title was literally just my thoughts on RFK. And dude, my average view on my posts, like on a reel or a post, static post, is probably like 700 to like maybe 2,000 views on like a good day. Like, I'm pumped about 2,000 views, bro. And that post got 105,000 views. And let's see, I actually have like the stats here, and I didn't do it for that. I obviously did it because it just felt right and it aligned with me. 105,000 views, 524 likes, 43 comments, 433 shares, and 462 saves. And so for me, it's just like, obviously people are resonating. Like, obviously what I said feels like truth. And I would say that 98% of the people that like commented on it were like, oh my God, I resonate with this. And then there was like 2 people that were like, yeah, this is like, I don't agree with this. And I literally commented back being like, that's okay. Like, I'm open. I'm here for like an open conversation. And I'm not here to say I'm right. I'm just saying, like, with the stats, I think most people seeing that post like couldn't really deny it. And it's funny because the first like 4 minutes I posted it, I think I lost maybe 8 to 10 followers. And then I gained like 60 to 80. And if you're familiar with Food Babe, Vani Hari,
yeah.
Somehow I think she follows me because I met her at the expo a couple times. But obviously, like, I don't know, she's just kind of a big public figure, which is cool. But she actually reposted my post. And I think that expanded the view a lot, which is super cool. I was honored. I mean, I even reflecting on it now is super cool because she's someone I really look up to. Like, even when I first got my business started, 3 or 4 years ago, and a lot of people give her hate too. And I'll be honest, she can be very bombastic and very forward and very, I don't want to say like attacking people, but she's very passionate because like she knows kids are being poisoned. She went through her own healing journey. And so obviously she's passionate about it. I had some other girl that has like 150,000 followers, like, reposted. I don't even know who she was. So I don't do it for reach. I don't do it to go viral, but I look at my page, I got whatever, like 6,200 followers, which again, I don't really quote care, but my mission is to impact as many people as possible. So now I'm at this point where like, I got to keep telling my truth because people obviously want to hear it.
Well, it was inspiring to see that post, and dude, fuck yeah on that, for the awareness of it and getting it out there. Because it's such an important message, and it's something that's being really focused in on now for that awareness. And it absolutely relates to small business owners to understand what the hell is going on, because I know we can get so stuck in the micro of our world and what's happening just to get by, to make sure revenue is coming in, to make sure you're getting a profit and that you're able to continue this business moving forward. So I'm curious, taking it from that to like, what has surprised you about the national conversation on food right now?
Saw someone repost something the other day and I really resonated with it because they said something about like people that are in opposition to their views, they're not even mad at them anymore, or they're not surprised because they've done a lot of healing and they're emotional intelligent and they understand. So that's an interesting question. But I guess if I had to say, like, one thing I'm kind of surprised by and sort of confused by is some people saying that RFK is a conspiracy theorist, or like taking food dyes out of our food system is like missing the point. And it's like, dude, we haven't talked about food in the mainstream media in 60 years. And it's been talked about more in the past 6 to 12 months than ever before. And so for me, it's like, I agree, getting rid of food dyes in a food in processed packaged food isn't going to solve the food system, but it's getting people talking. And there is a lot of evidence and proof that that can lead to, ADHD and inflame the brain. And again, we don't have to go into too much detail on it. If anyone wants to look at my RFK post, I talk a little bit about the Tylenol stuff, and it just kind of, I don't know if funny is the right word, but to me, when you get into holistic healing and you have such a battle with Western medicine, like for me, suffering from chronic acne for 10 years, not getting the answers I was looking for, and then literally within 5 weeks of changing my diet, totally eradicated all my acne and hemorrhoids. And then you see all these people that go through their own healing journey in the very similar story, or like a Western medicine doctor that spent $200,000 in 10 years in medical school and in practice. And then they're like, holy crap, this like isn't the way. Like that takes so much courage. And I have so much respect for people who do that. Like you literally have to let your ego just be shattered. But they do it because they know, and they've gone through the dark night of the soul, and they hear higher powers telling them that something has to change. So yeah, I guess I'm just kind of surprised when people like attack RFK saying he's like a conspiracy theorist. You can have your open views. You can say that you don't agree with certain things, but people just like say stuff. Like they don't actually like say it from like a leg to stand on. They're just like because they've just been so honestly programmed, hypnotized, and brainwashed by the typical American system of like big pharma and big healthcare, and like these double-blind placebo. These research studies show that these drugs are effective, and it's not to say that they aren't, depending on how you define the word effective, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you look at any medication, it does poison your body. It does create toxins in your body, and the reason we have side effects is because the body is perfect and it is always trying to return to homeostasis. So I'm not saying you can't do medication. I never say this to any of my clients or really anybody. My question is just, is what you're doing actually working, depending on how you define the word working? Because if you're trying to solve the root cause, you will see that whenever you take a medication, if you take a heartburn medication, if you take Tylenol, if you take prednisone for inflammation, anything, there are always side effects. And if you watch a drug commercial, there's always hundreds of side effects. If you have fever, or if you puke, or if you like feel like you're going to die, then like consult your doctor. And that's just so wild to me, because the beauty of the body is always trying to communicate to us. And so if you take a medication, let's say, for example, like a heartburn medication, it's going to strip B12 from your body. It's going to strip calcium. It's going to like deplete your iron, because the body, it's kind of the biggest blessing and the curse. It's always trying to keep us safe. So if there's a synthetic aspect or petroleum-based aspect of this medication that's poisoning the body, then it has to pull from other places to keep the body in homeostasis. Hopefully there's extra, bank, if you will, of calcium. Hopefully there's an extra bank of iron. And most of the time there is. And in an acute sense, it's not a big deal. But when you compound and you compound and you compound, eventually when the rate of damage outpaces the rate of recovery, then that's when you get disease, right? And so for me, it's just like, it's easy for me to say because I've been through my own healing journey, but it is kind of surprising and shocking when people are just like so outraged and so against someone that is literally trying to heal humans. Like, I don't understand how that is political or like bipartisan. And I get it because we have Medicaid, Medicare, all these systems around how our society and economy has literally been built off of getting people sick. And that's not an exaggeration. If you ever watch any documentary about the Sackler family and Big Pharma, and as a matter of fact, I was at a bar watching the Yankees game last night, and this woman was like telling me that her like boyfriend like injured his shoulder, and then he got put on like pain medications, and then he got into other things, and she was like, I was with the guy for I think 10 years, and I was like gonna marry the guy, and then I lost him. Like, I literally lost him to like drugs after he had a shoulder injury. And so for me, I get it because that we can appreciate the acute healing of certain medications, but ultimately the question I ask a lot of my clients is, do you ever think that being on medication is actually the reason that you're on medication? Because people don't realize that it actually makes it worse, and that these companies, just like any other business model, want recurring customers. And I think most of them are very good-hearted and they want to heal, and vaccines and pharmaceutical drugs are made because people work their asses off in the lab, and they think they're actually doing good things, and I think they are too. I think they are doing good things. But when you look at the big picture, and if we actually want to heal this chronic epidemic of sickness, just outrageous when you look at the numbers, and it's just so pushed down and pushed down. And then because RFK is the only human that's had the freaking, quite frankly, balls to say anything about what the fuck is going on, then obviously he's going to get some heat for it. And I don't think most of it is malicious to be like, oh, it's all like money motivated. But it's like the ego of like, okay, I've lived my life a certain way. I've had kids that have taken vaccines, or like, I know that Big Pharma has saved my friend's life or whatever, which isn't necessarily untrue. That's absolutely correct. But if we want to really get to the root, like Desmond Tutu says, instead of just pulling people out of the river, we got to figure out why they're falling in the river in the first place. So a lot of this will never happen unless we slow down, because we're just so busy doing the next thing and healing the next patient. And it's wild. Obviously, I could talk about this forever, but it is just surprising to me, to answer your question, that people have such a tough time putting their ego aside and putting their everything that they've ever believed in somewhere else, and like actually being open to like changing. And that's why I'm always so inspired by the Western medical doctors that go kind of the opposite route, because they realize what they're doing is kind of contributing to making things actually worse. So yeah, it's a sensitive subject, and it can be a touchy wound, and so that's why most people won't talk about it. And I think that it's like unfortunate that we just kind of praise people to have a doctor title or a couple 2 letters next to their name, and that means they're legit and they're official and they know what they're talking about. I think a lot of them are very smart, but that doesn't mean that. And I mean, obviously on social media, anyone can just hop on there and say stuff, and I agree with that. Like, you got to be careful of like who you're taking information from, but ultimately your body is the ultimate messenger, so you got to listen to your body. But I was watching the documentary about the girl who like swims with sharks, I think Ocean Ramsey. It's a really good one if you haven't seen it. And there was like an older woman who was like commenting on her journey. I thought it was so cool, because there was a lot of like marine biologists being like, oh, she's not legit, she doesn't have her bachelor's, yada yada. And the old woman, older people are usually more wise and unbiased, because they've learned to like not give a shit. And she was like, you know what, the smartest scientists are the people who spend the most time in the lab. And using her example, like, she's swimming with the sharks every day, so she studies them every single day. She knows how this shit works. And so that's why I think when you get advice from someone that's gone through a healing journey like RFK, or maybe someone like myself, like, there's just no denying the truth. And when you hop on hundreds of enrollment calls and enroll 85, 90 clients, and you hear just like, oh, I'm just so sick of like not getting answers from the Western system or like my medical doctor, and I just don't know what to do, like, can you help me? It's like there's just no denying it anymore. And there's a lot of, it's like, how many more double-blind randomized control trials do we need to prove that sugar causes cancer, and that alcohol poisons your body, and that there are side effects from pharmaceutical drugs, So thanks for letting me go on a tangent there.
Hell yeah, I appreciate that too for sharing it. And then there's four things that came up. One relating to RFK Jr. I mean, what he has done has been inspiring to me. Going back to similar to what you talk about of of truth, of sharing that out in the world when you see it and courageously doing that. And then for me, seeing his journey of how mainstream media would twist certain things that he said, that really opened up my eyes to like, oh wow, there's different worlds that we are looking at, and
Mm-hmm.
based off of the information that we're gathering. And it's coming back to how can we figure out at least a fundamental truth that we can connect on. And it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard to do that. But that really woke me up to then the realization of, okay, for the second point of like the challenge here is then you have to shatter your worldview
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And
Mm-hmm.
there has to be strength internally and a self-trust to be able to handle that change. And that's where when you talk about with the work of being able to navigate and understand your body more, and then with nutrition making sure that that's supporting your body, it's so important for business owners to realize that it's like connected, make sure the internal is there, and then it can help you for externally how you navigate the world, and handle challenges that come up. And then the third one was what you talked about near the end is like your body is on your team. And I know I went through that fear with my body, and it was a challenge to really trust my body that it's going to bring me back to homeostasis, and reminding myself of that. But it is, those nearly 40 trillion cells are there. And then the fourth is actually leading to then a question when it comes to like the younger generation, especially I think of young men.
Mm.
Why do you feel that this generation of young men is checking out?
What do you mean by checking out?
I think of checking out of you look at anxious,
Mm.
the last 30 years, more men are anxious, more using antidepressants. You think about if it's porn to alcohol, like all these different ways to numb out. And I believe recently there's a trend of hope. I mean, that's where RFK Jr. for me, that ignited this hope and this fire
Mm.
to like go out there and continue to move forward in the business and continue to like plow through into the unknown. So I do think that there's a shift that's happening, but I'm wondering just to get your take on that for like, why do you feel like this generation could be checking out?
Fear.
Mhm.
It's just fear of being seen, fear of being vulnerable, thinking that it's not all right to be not all right. And you know what, man, when I was in like high school and college, I feel like I heard these exact words, and it was always just like, yeah, I throw around the terms of like depression, anxiety, and even from my selfish self, like I think that I used to have that mindset of like, oh, like, just figure it out, dude. Like it's not that hard. Like just figure it out. But then when you go through it, you're like, oh, I didn't actually realize what this word actually meant until I experienced it. And that's how most humans are wired. We just kind of learn the hard way. But yeah, I mean, the suicide rate for males is 4 times higher than it is for women. And maybe we talked about this on the last podcast, and going back to your point of like letting the ego shatter and die. That's it right there. Is people, and men especially, are they'd literally rather actually die than let their ego die. Um, and it's unfortunate because I've been connected to people from, second degree of separation, first degree of separation, whether it's friends whose dads have committed suicide or friends of a friend that have committed suicide. And it just doesn't need to happen. And at the same time, like, I really empathize with those people, because when I went through my depression, I got to a very dark place. I never, planned anything out or anything to that degree, but it was just like, how the heck am I going to keep moving forward? Like, I am in so much pain every single day. But this is the kind of the tying it back to even like the Western healthcare system, is that everything that is created from the Western healthcare system is literally like supposed to pull you out of pain fast. But pain is there for a reason, and every single sensation we feel from the body is there for a reason. And so healing is actually the expanding your capacity to hold pain, whereas like fixing and using the Western system is actually numbing that ability out. And so most people are choosing to numb out. And I honestly don't blame them, because the world we live in is bonkers. It's absurd. It's the amount of stimulation is crazy. And I'm I'm gonna write a book, because I have so many thoughts and so much stuff I post on social media, which I'm grateful for, but it's literally just not enough space or time. And like this content idea I had the other day was like, do you ever just feel so like overwhelmed or just in awe and just disbelief of like how overstimulating this world is, and just trying to keep up with like everything, like whether it's, you're a younger kid and you're going through college and you're going through that first year of awkwardness and meeting people, and you start to get further into college and you actually have to start studying and the tests are really hard, and you're yeah, like kind of transforming as a human, and then you're also using alcohol to numb things out and coming across a lot of maybe anxiety and yeah, just like confrontational things. Same with high school too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in like Southern California and some of the wealthiest towns in SoCal, and kids are just like literally committing like high school kids are just committing suicide. It's like, what is going on? Like our brains are so inflamed that we just can't even fucking handle everyday life. And this is what Zach Bush even talks about. He's like, why is it that when you're driving from your house to the post office or to drop your kid off of school, like you feel like in 4 minutes, like your brain is just going to fucking explode from the media or the stress of your job or the stress of taking care of your kids. And so it's like, we've literally just created this society that is literally killing us, whether it's the food or it's the plastics or it's the stressful jobs that we're not meant to, operate in a box from 9 to 5 every single day. The media that's just so polarizing, like all of these like technological advances that actually, although some of them like might make our lives easier, the only reason we need them is because we keep advancing. And I think the more we technologically advance, actually the further we separate ourselves from our true self. Because what I've realized, to kind of tie it in, man, is that like when I spent the 2 weeks in the mountains, I just realized how simple life could be. Like I was like, I wear the same shirt, the same shorts every single day. I have my laptop, I have a kitchen to cook food in, I have a couch and a rocking chair and a bed. And obviously there's, little things that I need that I have. But I've started to step into minimalism, and it's been so freaking powerful. And if anyone's listening to this podcast and you're interested in the slightest bit, I highly recommend you just type on Google like minimalist podcasts, and those guys are super informative. They're actually hilarious. They're like actually fun to like listen to and watch, because most of the podcasts I listen to are like very serious, and it's been like a nice change up. And so they're really funny and they're easy to listen to, but they also tie like holding on to physical things and how that relates to like stored physical trauma and emotional trauma in your life, and all these things that we think we need, like the fancy car and the big house and the fancy job title. Like eventually you will just get to a point where you realize that just does not fulfill you. And it's great to achieve and accomplish, and you need money and all that. And don't get me wrong, that's very important. But even Jim Carrey says it. He's like, he has a famous quote. He says, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous so they could realize it's not it." So yeah, I think that most men are just being indoctrinated and programmed and hypnotized into being taught what they think, what other people think that they should do or how they should live. And then they're constantly living this life of misalignment. And then they wonder why like they accomplish all these things, but they still feel unfulfilled, because they're not actually chasing what they actually want. Right. Like, I don't know, for me, I think most college kids can probably relate to this. Like I had no idea what I wanted to major in, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, because I've never been taught how to like hone in on my purpose and what matters to me in life. And oftentimes most people's purpose comes from pain and going through a tough time. And that's why you got to feel the pain, because that turns into purpose. But if you numb out the pain, you never get your purpose, because you can't feel what's meant to be felt. It's like literally intuitive download from God and the universe. And so any desire, any want you have, you shouldn't have to justify it to anybody, because that, I believe, from what I've experienced and what I've learned and studied, like want and desire is an intuitive download from higher power. You don't have to justify that or explain that to anybody. And so, yeah, I think a lot of men are just, and I'll even be honest myself, man, like being in the healing space, it seems like a lot of humans in the healing space are women, and that's fine and that's great. But I don't think enough men have safe space from men. It's great to get safe space from women, but it's a very different energy. I think women are going to just be very empathetic and understanding and hold the space, which is extremely powerful. But men can also do that, and they can like hold you accountable and be like, dude, in like a healthy way, like let's get your shit together, bro. Like,
Yeah.
like you need to like, not in like a toxic way, but like, dude, I'm here for you. I'm your boy. Like, let's do this together. And as an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely. But just in general, America is not set up for community. So that's a huge missing point. And that's why I think a lot of men and people in general are just, defaulting to medication, defaulting to binge scrolling on their phone, defaulting to porn, defaulting to alcohol, defaulting to marijuana. It's like in life, we're either moving away from pain or towards pleasure. And more so than ever in a survival mode, your primal brain is going to try to move away from pain. So if you're feeling awkward, if you're feeling bored, if you're feeling, uncomfortable being seen, you're in some sort of pain, any pain, your body and your identity and your like, image you create of yourself and just the feeling of that pain, your body will do anything in its power to avoid that. And that is again why you see it in politics of like, I have this viewpoint, or like I'm a vegan and I'm like, an influencer online, and I have told people this is my identity and this is who I am. So therefore I have to stick with that, or else like my whole identity is shattered. And that's what happened to me as a health coach struggling with his health. I went through an identity crisis. So most people, oh, I'm a doctor, so like this is how we've always done it. So therefore like I have to keep in line with this. So that willingness to shatter the ego is how you get to vulnerability, and vulnerability is literally the gateway to change. So unfortunately, a lot of men are just, they don't have the support, dude. Like they don't have the support from humans in general, but men specifically. And I think that's so important to have like actual brotherhood, and it's so missing. And so, this is a long answer, but there's a lot of factors that contribute to it. But, food is also a huge one, because I was never taught that conventional dairy and conventional gluten and too much sugar and not enough sleep can lead to acne and all these insecurities that I built up myself from my physical appearance, but how that, really affected me internally. And so, man, it's just sad. I think a lot of men are just taught to, suppress the emotions. And again, we don't want to get to a point where we're just like basking in our emotions and letting it just destroy us and bury us. I think one of my clients who like went through AA was like, don't let your lunch eat your lunch. Just don't really get what that means, but I think I understand what she was trying to say. It's like, don't spiral, but, be willing to feel your emotions and be masculine, which again, my definition of that is like, be confident, being vulnerable, and knowing that the stones aren't going to get thrown at you. And 99% of the time, people are going to wrap their arms around you. If they don't, then they're just insecure in themselves and they're going to figure out their own journey. And that's the energetic alignment thing. And so, it just sucks. Like, because a lot of the antidepressants, a lot of the anti-anxiety, Adderall, Tylenol, all these things, like they numb, they literally numb you. And that is probably the hardest truth that most people aren't willing to grasp onto, is that you actually need to feel pain to heal and to feel better. And you can't heal what you can't feel. And so, I've gone through it in many different ways, but it's necessary.
It's powerful. We actually came up with 4 things I've talked about for like young men. Like one is how to become stronger. In a general term, would be honor the commitments that you say you're going to do. Second, working out consistently. Third, realizing your emotions are temporary. And then fourth, just moving forward and kicking ass. And it's interesting because numbing, I mean, that came up in my life. That's what we resonate on for you and I, is numbing a lot of our lives for our emotions that we just were pushing away and suppressing. And it was interesting because I had like an interesting perspective now on numbing, and actually how powerful and it is actually a priceless gift that's given to you. But how I think about it is going through the challenges of being a business owner and moving through the hard shit and having to figure out where's the revenue going to come in. Especially starting off, like how to deal with taxes and like I think of the tax code in the US, it's like over 2,000 pages. It's just ridiculous. And then navigating, okay, if I got employees, how do I deal with that? Communication, if I want to get my message out, like all these different things that just pile up. And there's a point where you can get to experiencing your emotions and navigating it. And then there's actually times where you just got to go and push through. And it's interesting because it's a give and take where you got to have that moment of slowing down and then going back to balance of homeostasis, even for the body, and taking that into your external world. It's like understanding that all these different things that you've experienced, you may have thought of it as it may have affected you in a very negative way. But if you can turn that and figure out how you can actually leverage that to move forward, that's where I think the full circle moment comes for a lot of business owners and then men too, to realize, oh yeah, my emotions are temporary. Like I don't need to sit in this and drown in this. I can realize they're temporary and understand the action and move forward. So that came through when you were talking. That really resonated for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, pain is beautiful, dude. Like, I'll try to keep the story as short as possible, but essentially, yeah, I just had this moment where I felt like I really wanted to live alone and live in solitude, and just kind of feeling called to nature, and kind of had some tough conversations that, like, I guess went well in the big picture, but kind of triggered me and triggered others in the conversation. And so it kind of spurred me to just kind of come to the woods. And dude, within like 10 minutes, but also the first week, just I felt so connected to nature. I felt better as soon as I got here. And I actually, like, for the first time in my life, like, actually felt like I had like legit conversations with God, just being so immersed in nature. And you can't ignore that. And it's just so in your face. And there was one day where it was like a Friday, and to your point, I was trying to like figure out taxes and administrative stuff, which to this day is probably the most triggering thing for me as an entrepreneur, because you want to do the stuff you love, like this podcast and coaching people. And that's why, like, the biggest bottleneck for me is delegating and hiring some people. And hopefully that's going to come soon. But yeah, it was like 2:00 on a Friday, and I was like trying to push through this thing. And again, to your point, there's definitely an aspect of like, limiting beliefs and like ways that you can push through, and you're way more capable than you think. But then there's like a law of diminishing returns, right? Things that decrease at an exponential rate. Maybe I botched that, but yeah, that was actually one of the biggest things I learned in my economics course in college, and probably college in general. Is that if you try to work till 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, you're actually making things worse. And the benefit you get from that and staying up later and working harder is actually making you worse and more burnt out. And your body will let you know about it, no matter what your financial situation is, no matter what your living situation is. Like, it is trying to survive. And if you're pushing through too much in a toxic way, it's going to fucking let you know. But anyway, it was like 2:00 on a Friday. I was like trying to push through. And I was like, you know what? I just can't. I just fucking can't. And so I closed my laptop, and I posted about it in my Instagram story. But basically, I just like ended up meeting these older women, and one of them like lived across the way from this like rock jump place I was doing some backflips off, and I was like about to leave, and they were coming up. They were like 70 and 75, but they like looked like they were in great shape. And so we started chatting. They actually needed my help to get up the rock. So she had lived there for 10 years and had never jumped off the rock before. And like, I just so happened to be there, like right at the exact perfect time to like, they actually needed help to get up to the top. Maybe that's why they never did it before. And then they like invited me into their house for tea, just like these random strangers. And like, we literally just, I went in and we talked about like spirituality, and like they recommended all these books to me, and I was talking about health, and we were just like vibing, and it was just so cool, dude. And then just even waking up here in the mountains, I just felt this pull. I was like, I'm literally speaking to God right now. And you just can't ignore that. And so the pain is always leading you to something beautiful, whether that was that conversation I was having with some of my friends that kind of like triggered me, that got me to the mountains, or like me trying to figure this thing out with my business that was frustrating me, that got me to go kayaking and go to this place where I met these women. And then actually after that, I met this guy who was like, had his Sprinter van, and he was talking about the whole Sierras and like the Mammoth Lakes and Big Bear and Tahoe. And I was like, dude, I literally had this light bulb moment. I was like, what if I just like minimalize my life, make it super simple, leave my place of 4 years that I've been wanting to leave for 2 years anyway, and just like come back here and work remote and be a digital nomad. And so none of that would have happened. None of these realizations would have happened if I didn't have that pain, or like be willing to see the lesson in the pain. And the last thing I'll say is, the place I was staying at had this book. If you're familiar with Bob Proctor, it's called Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. And I read that book, and it changed my life. And he basically, his whole theme is like, you have been programmed your entire life. You've been programmed into fear. You've been programmed with these limiting beliefs. You think you can't do these things. You have all these negative self-talk. And 98% of the time, those thoughts aren't actually true. And I'm guilty of it, and I still work on it to this day, but it's crazy how much that can actually bury you. And so because we're hypnotized through the media and through junk food and through big healthcare and big pharma, that numbs us every day, slowly but surely, like kind of that Goldilocks of like, yeah, you kind of might feel some effects, but not really. And you're so numb that you don't even know that you have a spell on you, basically. And if you've seen, I think it's Big Food, or maybe the C Word is the documentary for free on YouTube. Morgan Freeman like is the voiceover for it, and he's like, yeah, we basically all signed up for this lab experiment in the food industry that we didn't even know that we signed up for. And it's little by little, right? Because the cigarette industry bought food industry in like the 1990s and literally moved the scientists from the cigarette scientists to food, and now are addicting people the exact same way. And so all that to say, like that book that just so happened to be at this place I'm staying at, like just changed my life. And when you realize that your thoughts are a choice, even when they really don't feel like they are, and I resonate with that to this day. It's like, why am I feeling like crap right now? Yeah, you just got to check it. You got to question your thoughts. You got to question the food you're eating. You got to question the media that's hypnotizing you. So, yeah.
Yeah, the questioning is what came up, is like letting small business owners realize that you can question and you can figure out what's the answer that really resonates with you, of how you want to, see the world, and then see your life, and then where are you feeling love. And going back to the importance of making sure when it comes to the work, comes to people in your life, like if is that love flowing, or is it getting cut off? And that can really help to lead you forward. And it's not like you're going to find this like massive treasure and like all the answers are revealed. I think we can get sucked in the all or nothing. Like I now know everything. But it's just coming back to, okay, what is, going back to the alignment, but then what for you is allowing you to feel more of that love. And I think that's a great way that and growth are the two things for me, where I feel the most fulfillment is being on that path of growth.
I love that, dude. And this is what Bob Proctor talks about in his book. He's like, you just got to commit. You got to feel the download from the universe or God, whatever you want to call it. Commit to it because you just feel it in your bones at a cellular level. And then the how automatically happens. And that's literally scientific, because the reticular activating system, if you want to manifest something, you want something, you'll do anything in your power to get it. The mind will get creative and your reality will literally shift to be able to get that. And I think that's super powerful. And, the experiences I've had in the mountains here, obviously, is the reason I moved out of my place. And I kind of felt like I went through like a micro quantum leap, which is still a term I don't know the full definition on, but basically just like drastically changing your life pretty quick. Because I had such a profound experience with God. And I think if you're listening to this and you're not into religion or whatever, like I definitely think there are toxic aspects of like organized religion. There's a video somebody sent me, actually. Someone's interested in listening to this, I could send it to you. But I think you don't have to like be tied or like associate to like some sort of label or a religion. It's just being a quote good person. I think like this moral compass of like good and bad is, to me, that is just like a higher power, universe, God. Just like we all kind of know like stealing a candy bar at a convenience store is not good, or like cheating on your partner is not good. Like where that must come from somewhere, right? And so for me, like when I just went through the burnout and then I kind of got like little phases of it, like, and you just get so frustrated and you get so dark and so angry, and then like beauty pops out on the other side. Like how can you explain any of that outside of just something outside of you and a higher power or God? And that is why I think, unfortunately, so many people are so like logistical or like analytical or like whatever it might be. And there's a spiritual crisis going on in America and in the world. And so people aren't like slowing down. They're not connected to themselves. So then they're just bickering at each other because they're not connected to anything. And so for me, when that situation happened where I like met as weird as it sounds of a story, like getting frustrated working and then like shutting my laptop, going into nature, that's literally what I said to myself. I was like, I can't figure this out. Like I just got to go in nature. Like I'm not meant to like be here right now. And this pain is getting me to go somewhere else. And then I just kind of like reflected on the day and the conversation I had, and then meeting that guy who told me about how he works for DHL, like nothing fancy, like takes a few weeks off and just has his Ford Sprinter van and, goes and enjoys the lakes. And I just like all these light bulb moments. And I was like, how can you explain that whole day besides like God just like was working his magic on me, And
Oh man.
I grew up as a Catholic. I was like pretty freaking opposed to that stuff because it was just verbatim from the Bible, did not resonate. You know, every now and then, maybe once or twice, 3 times a year, I've gone to like non-denominational churches, and those resonate with me. I like the music. That oftentimes the pastors can feel very just neutral and very relatable. But I've also gone to some of those that are like, this feels like a cult, and I actually don't resonate with this like almighty, like this person is my savior, and like let me like bow down. And I'm not saying that there isn't an aspect of that. And when I'm saying I believe in God, you know, you could say that that's kind of maybe a little bit of what I'm doing. But I think we are given free will, and we are creators, and God like created us as creators in his image from the experiences I've had. Um, but yeah, I think one thing I want to say is also a download that came through. I think that there is also a misalignment between like people that have just like given their life to whatever Jesus or God is great, and I admire that. And maybe this is just what I'm seeing, and this is me projecting, but I think there are some people in that space too that just like not, they know that they're not perfect because like the whole dynamic of like Jesus and God and like sin is like a thing. But I think there's a lot of people in that space that also haven't really like healed like their traumas or like their inner wounds, and you can kind of like sense it. And I've seen a lot of people, even like big time people that are super religious and into faith, but you can tell they haven't like healed their emotional wounds, and it just does not resonate with me. And so I know it's interesting. I feel like I'm kind of like meshing my own emotional intelligence with like spiritual intelligence, and it's been like super super powerful. So when I see people that are connected to themselves, and they just so happen to like refer to their spirituality as God, or whether it is higher power, it doesn't really matter what you call it. I don't know. That's the truth. My truth to me personally is when you get that just like deep resonant feeling that you can't even explain.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because for me, what's been coming up in my journey is going through that, what you talk about of the emotional intelligence. That's a gift that is priceless that I
Mm-hmm.
do hope like generally people can all experience that.
Yeah.
I know there's outliers, and I do believe that there are those people that are evil in their intent,
Mm.
but for the general public, for me, it's like that's such a priceless gift to give to yourself, and then it's from there deciding how you want to have that structure of support. Like where does your faith go, and what is the bigger picture for
Mm-hmm.
you? And it's interesting because I've actually been traveling this journey back to Christianity and reading the
Mm.
Bible. And it's been interesting to dive into it from this perspective now of a groundedness where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I open up more to God and connect more to the courage within me to go out there and take action. And what you're saying and what came through for me with that is like, there there are different ways to navigate the world, and that is something that's okay. It's
Mm.
figuring out for you what is going to be what resonates deeply at your core, and
Mm-hmm.
then from there being able to share where it feels called to share. But then realizing that it's Charlie Kirk's actually had the line where it's like, we can have clarity but not agreement.
Mm.
And having just the conversations, going back to what we talked about, having conversations, being able to realize that we're going to be different in so many different ways, but we can still be able to be a civilization together. And especially in the business owner community, like being able to come together, supporting one another, is a powerful gift. And you just don't have to have full agreement in certain areas. That came through as you were talking too.
I don't remember who was the original creator of the quote, but thou shalt not stand idly by, I think is really powerful. And I've been really feeling that since the passing of Charlie Kirk. And regardless of your political views, anyone listening to this on him, I think that it's hard to deny that that situation has really impacted us on a spiritual level. And more people are like getting connected to whether they want to call it God or just themselves or being a better person in general. I mean, dude, like I have literally just felt this call, yeah, within my own business and what I do with my mission and purpose, but literally just like going out in everyday life and just like being a good person. Like that is intention. I always say kindness, like people say like, oh, it's free, but kindness isn't free because you actually have to take care of yourself to feel good about yourself, to want to help other people. If you feel like crap and you're depressed and you're burnt out, and I did this, like you put your head down, you go to the gym, you put your head down, you don't want to talk to anybody. But if you're in a good mood and you're feeling healthy, you talk to the front desk person, hey, how's your day going? Or like you talk to just random strangers and you never know someone that can change your life or how you can change someone else's life. And I've literally just felt this call to, at the grocery store, ask someone, hey, do you want me to put your grocery cart away for you so you don't have to walk all the way back there and you can just hop in your car and be on your way? Or this homeless person, you know, some of them are like maybe whacked out on drugs and they're just hard to approach and you don't go near them. But there's also people that just seem really innocent. I'm like, damn, that person like could probably use $5. And I'm an entrepreneur and I'm still figuring out my finances, very much so. But no matter how much you can always give. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be a kind word or a kind thing. Or, I mean, I was at the post office today and I gave a guy a free bag of chips because he sampled them, and we did like a little video testimonial, and I was like, he's like, oh, those are so good. Like, how can I get more of them? I was like, you know what, dude, like just have this whole bag. And I've just been doing that since the passing of Charlie Kirk, and just with everything, like the stabbing and the school shooting. And, you know, I go back to the quote of thou shalt not stand idly by. It's just, I think there's so much like guilt tripping today, because obviously like I'm passionate about nutrition. I think most people shouldn't stand idly by because there's a lot of like terrible demonic things happening, and people are dying and being poisoned and dying while they're still alive on this planet. And a quick quote is actually, most people die at 25. We just bury them at 75. So it's kind of a nuance. Like I can agree that thou shalt not stand idly by, and people who are passionate about certain topics are obviously going to be wanting people to talk about what they care about. But at the end of the day, like when we live on social media, you will literally, people will get mad at you for talking about something, and they will also get mad at you for not talking about something. So like, I'm not going to say it's like a disheartening thing or apathetic, like, okay, like how do we win? It's just like, dude, do the best you can, stand up for what you believe in, and support where else you can as well. But let the people who really care about something speak into that. And if it resonates with you and you want to hop on their mission and be a part of their vision, then resonate with that. But you can't talk about everything. You can't please everybody. And that is where I think there's this macro level deep wound from a lot of people that are like just living in this like victim mentality and poor me. And I've been there, especially that's like what the definition of burnout is like feeling bad for yourself. And it's something I still work on to this day, because most of us are very, very lucky and grateful, and well, not grateful, but we should be grateful because we have so much. We have so much. And even when I started getting into minimalism and I'm like auditing all the stuff I have in my house after 4 years, I'm like, honestly, I don't really need half this stuff, but like, holy crap. Not that like things matter, but like I have so much in my life in general, just from emotions and people and experiences. But it's like we're complaining about all this stuff. It's like, oh, this person put oat milk in my latte instead of almond milk. Like I'm fucking pissed. Like my day's gonna suck. It's like, are you kidding me, dude? Do you realize how beautiful your life is? If you can even be on social media, if you're complaining about social media, if you can have a phone, a computer basically that fits in your pocket, and you can talk to someone 3,000 miles away, and you woke up today and you can breathe and you can walk and you have all your limbs, like, and you're just constantly complaining about everything that's wrong in the world, like you got to check yourself. Like, what are you doing? You know? And we have things we fight for, we want to be passionate about, and obviously that's what I do and that's what you do. But at the end of the day, like if we just start focusing on the good and finding the good in things and in people, like the world is just going to be a much better place.
Yeah, and leading in that way too, because going back to the death of Charlie Kirk, from when that happened, I hadn't known a lot about his work, and then I dove deep into it, and it was interesting because what kept coming up in his debates was saying that this country, the U.S., is the greatest country in the world of all time, and I didn't really get that because I'd grown up in feeling shame and guilt for living in this country, and there's so many problems, and go back to what you talked about, victim mindset. But then actually diving into the stats and looking at, how many immigrants come to this country, how much voluntary giving is done for this country, for the citizens, and just these other stats that were coming through of, wow, like there's so much good out there that's being put out there, and you get to decide which path you want to take. And no one has to force you into then shifting what deep down you resonate with. And you can say like, fuck that, I'm going to stick with this because I know it's making an impact. And being able to stand strong in that is something to be celebrated. And then just to continue to move forward and put good out there, especially in the small business owner community. That's so important, because really a small business owner community, looking at 99% of all businesses are small businesses. And so that is the heart of the economy. That is the heart, soul, I believe, of the country. And if continuously there can be a push for being good, of letting that good out into more in the world,
Right.
I think that's a precious gift too.
Dude, I love that. I just got the chills when you said that. Like, there's so much good in the world, and I think that is the unfortunate aspect of most of social media, is that it's just pushing out what's bad, and it's also clickbaiting. And now, scary to me is more than ever, like the AI stuff is like, it like looks so real, and you're like, oh, and then your mind gets confused. And yeah, it's just, I guess the negative stuff from a primal perspective, somehow the brain just prefers that, and it seeks it out. And most people are addicted to suffering and bad news. And so, like, then there's also that aspect of people guilt tripping you for not paying attention to the news. Like, you have to be informed, like this is going on. It's like, you can't win. And so that's why you can't please everybody. So ultimately you got to take care of yourself. And I don't say that in a selfish way. I say that when you do that, then you have more capacity to help other people, and within your own bandwidth as a human on this planet. Like, we can't do everything, we can't please everybody. So to your point, like, you just got to stand up for what you believe in, what you feel like is worth it, help out wherever else you can. And I've even had opportunities to maybe impact this thing at a more black and white, like, political level. But you know what, dude, I've realized that the most impact you can make is just boots on the ground. Like, even though I do nutrition, that's my main thing, like, just being a good human. And like I said, that word good is kind of, I think, is just, there's just a feeling within most of us, like what's good and bad. And even we can still have different definitions of those words, because everyone has their own life experience. But just in terms of the feeling of, like, kind of that moral compass, I think a lot of us kind of have this foundation that hopefully we can agree on. And it feels really good to, like, be good. And the only way to be good is to feel good. And so it's kind of this funny, like, interconnected relationship, that taking care of yourself is not selfish. Like I always say, self-care is not selfish. That's my big thing. And it's an intentional thing though. Like, you have to, like, want to help other people, and you got to want to help yourself first. So even these little examples, right? Like just putting someone's grocery cart away, or saying, hey, I like your shirt. Like, you never know how far that can go. And that's honestly something my mom always taught me, was like, just smile at a stranger. It blows my mind in America. We just, like, put our heads down. I mean, it's one thing if you're in New York City or a busy city, you're obviously not going to say hi to everybody. But it's like, if you're walking by someone and they're walking their dog or something, and there's no one else around, like, it's so weird to me that we just, like, don't say hello, or we're just, like, staring down at our phones, or we can't look each other in the eyes. And something I still work on is probably a childhood trauma. I notice that when I'm in conversation, like, it's kind of a habit to kind of look away and not, like, maintain full eye contact with somebody. And I've realized that our reality is just a reflection of our internal state. So if we can't look somebody else in the eyes, it's really just because we can't really look ourselves in the eyes. And I think that's probably the core of the root issues in this, like, world, is just we haven't taken a look in the mirror at ourselves first.
Mike, I appreciate you. Appreciate what you're sharing with the community. It was awesome. How can business owners connect with you?
Yeah, I'm creating an interesting relationship and constantly mending my relationship with social media. But yeah, I'm on there a good bit. So it's just at Superfood, Superhuman, all singular, all one word, on Instagram. Not really. I mean, I'm on TikTok, but it's the same handle. Not on there as much. I'm on LinkedIn too, Mike Schmidt. If you search Superfood, Superhuman, probably comes up as well. Same thing on Facebook, and then just superfoodsuperhuman.com.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, brother.